I love the work. I love putting in the work. And, it's been difficult not being able to see the time you put in, being able to put on your jersey and see it pay off. But I think, like I said, I think it's been a really good opportunity for me to learn a lot about myself and, certain lessons that will probably be really important throughout my career as well.
Welcome back. For 274 days, the basketball world has been holding its breath. 274 days of rumors, of whispered doubts, of speculative headlines questioning if the magic was gone. When a generational talent suffers a catastrophic setback, the narrative usually shifts. History is full of dark legends about phenoms who flew too close to the sun, took a devastating fall, and never quite reclaimed their throne. They come back a step slower. They come back with a phantom hesitation. They become a shadow of their former selves. But April 25th, 2026, will not be recorded as a tragedy. It will be recorded as the day the paradigm shifted. When the Indiana Fever walked onto the court to face the New York Liberty, the atmosphere wasn't just electric, it was suffocating. You could feel the gravity of the moment. And when Caitlin Clark stepped over that sideline, the entire geometry of the WNBA changed in an instant. This wasn't just a preseason game. This was a forensic exhibition of dominance. 109-91. Utter annihilation against one of the most formidable rosters in the league. But if you are only looking at the box score, you are missing the entire story. The mainstream media is going to flash the numbers. 17 minutes, 7 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds. They will package it into a neat 30-second highlight reel and move on. But we don't do that here. We look beyond the obvious. We look for the underlying architecture of the game. Because what happened in those 17 minutes was a masterclass in psychological warfare and tactical evolution. Let us rewind the tape and break down the absolute insanity of this comeback. Imagine the psychological weight pressing down on her shoulders. The cameras are tracking her every blink. The defenders are foaming at the mouth, eager to test her physical limits, ready to welcome her back to the trenches with hard fouls and suffocating pressure. The whistle blows. The ball goes up. Within the first few possessions, the New York Liberty made a massive tactical blunder. They expected the Caitlin Clark of old. They expected the player who demanded the ball at the logo, who would dribble the air out of the sphere, waiting for the perfect isolation moment. The Liberty deployed a high hedge, aiming to trap her at the perimeter and force the ball out of her hands. But they were fighting a ghost. They were executing a battle plan for a war that was already over. What we witnessed was a complete operational shift. Clark did not demand the ball. Instead, she became a weaponized decoy. She initiated the offense by giving the ball up early and immediately darting into the shadows of the baseline. For a player of her caliber, moving without the ball is terrifying for a defense. It creates absolute panic. Watch the live footage closely. You can see the Liberty defenders constantly whipping their heads back and forth, ball, Clark, ball, Clark. That split second of hesitation, that defensive paralysis, is all it takes at this level. By utilizing relentless, high IQ off-ball movement, Clark was exploiting the hidden patterns of the Liberty's zone defense. She wasn't just running, she was hunting. She was finding the blind spots in the defensive rotation. And when she finally caught the ball off a staggered screen, the muscle memory took over. The signature step-back three-pointer. The shot that broke 1,000 hearts in college. It wasn't forced. It was completely organic, born out of a perfectly executed offensive set. Swish. First basket of the game. The arena erupted, but more importantly, the psychological damage to the New York Liberty was done. In less than 3 minutes, the narrative of rust was entirely shattered. We need to spend some time talking about the sheer physical grit required to play this way. The WNBA is a ruthless physical league. It is a battlefield where every inch of paint is contested with bruises and elbows. Coming off a 9-month injury hiatus, the natural human instinct is self-preservation. You avoid the contact. You settle for the deep jumpers. You let the game come to you. But Clark rejected that premise entirely. There was a sequence in the second quarter that defined the night. She caught the ball on the wing, pump-faked a close-out defender into the stratosphere, and put her head down, driving straight into the teeth of the Liberty's interior defense. She took a hard shoulder to the chest from a rotating big man, absorbed the contact, contorted her body in midair, and finished off the glass. She hit the floor hard, The crowd went dead silent for a fraction of a second, but she didn't wince. She didn't look at the bench. She bounced right back up, locked eyes with the defender, and jogged back on defense. That right there is the merch masala. That is the fire that you cannot teach. That is the mentality of a cold-blooded killer. She wasn't just testing her body. She was sending a direct message to the rest of the league. The message was clear. I am not afraid of the contact. I welcome it. That level of fearlessness completely changes the scouting report. If you cannot intimidate her, and you cannot outshoot her, how exactly do you stop her? This brings us to the most fascinating aspect of her 17-minute masterclass, her role as the ultimate orchestrator. 7 points might seem quiet for a player who regularly drops 30, but the impact of those 4 assists was nuclear. Because she commands so much defensive gravity, the moment she touches the ball, 2 or 3 defenders instinctively collapse toward her. It is a natural human reaction to a high-level threat. But the newly evolved Caitlin Clark doesn't panic under the double team. She dissects it. She was making reads that were 2 steps ahead of the defense. She was throwing no-look bullet passes to backdoor cutters before the passing lane even fully materialized. It was as if she was seeing the game from a bird's-eye view, anticipating the rotations before the Liberty players even knew they were going to rotate. This is the difference between playing checkers and playing chess. She was manipulating the New York defense, pulling them out of position, and then ruthlessly punishing their mistakes. The Fever's supporting cast looked like completely different players because they were catching the ball in wide-open spaces, entirely untouched by the opposition. Let us pivot for a moment and look at the macro perspective of what this season represents, because the context surrounding this game makes the performance even more legendary. The Indiana Fever are not just playing a basketball season, they are embarking on a grueling, unprecedented 44-game national tour. Every single game they play this year will be broadcast on national television. That is a historic milestone that no team in the history of the WNBA has ever achieved. Think about the magnitude of that pressure. Every single night, the brightest lights in the sporting world will be pointed directly at Indianapolis. Every missed shot, every turnover, every defensive lapse will be magnified, dissected, and debated by millions of people. It is a pressure cooker that would break a normal roster. It is a media circus that has the potential to become a massive distraction. But watching the Fever operate against the Liberty, you didn't see a team burdened by expectation. You saw an army that was ready for war. The chemistry was palpable. You could see it in the way they communicated on defense, pointing out switches, calling out screens, fighting through the physical screens with a unified intensity. And at the center of that storm was Clark, acting not just as a star player, but as a stabilizing force. When the Liberty went on a brief run in the late second quarter, the Fever didn't fracture. Clark slowed the pace down, called out a half-court set, and calmly delivered a precision pass that resulted in an easy layup, instantly stopping the bleeding. This level of maturity is terrifying for the rest of the league. If she has managed to merge her elite, otherworldly shooting ability with the tactical patience of a 10-year veteran, the ceiling for this Indiana Fever team is non-existent. They are no longer just a fun, young team with potential. They are a legitimate, immediate championship threat. The 109-91 scoreline wasn't a fluke. It was a preview. It was a clinical demonstration of what happens when elite talent meets flawless execution. And we have to give massive credit to the Indiana Fever coaching staff. Managing the return of a superstar is one of the most difficult jobs in professional sports. The temptation to let her play 30 minutes, to let her put on a show for the sold-out crowd, is overwhelming. But they executed a perfect strategy of load management and psychological warfare. Limiting her to 17 minutes was a masterstroke. By keeping her on a strict minutes restriction, they protected her physical health, ensuring she doesn't burn out before the regular season even begins. But more importantly, they left the New York Liberty and the rest of the league with a haunting realization. The Liberty just got blown out by 18 points, and the architect of their destruction was only on the floor for a fraction of the game. The Fever coaches essentially showed the rest of the league their ultimate weapon, fired a warning shot, and then put the weapon back in the holster. It leaves every upcoming opponent wondering, if they did this to New York with Clark playing 17 minutes, what are they going to do to us when she plays 35? This is why we analyze the game at a forensic level. The The mainstream narratives are too shallow. They talk about the comeback as if it is a fairy tale. But there are no fairy tales in professional basketball. There is only preparation, execution, and dominance. Caitlin Clark didn't magically heal and step back onto the court. She spent 9 months in the dark, rebuilding her body, refining her mechanics, and studying the absolute depths of the game. She transformed herself from a volume scorer into an incredibly efficient, highly lethal floor general. Let's dive even deeper into the specific mechanics of her off-ball movement, because this is the key to unlocking the entire season. In her rookie year, her usage rate was astronomical. She was the engine, the steering wheel, and the tires of the offense. But relying on one player to generate everything is a flawed strategy. It is exactly the kind of strategic blunder that leads to late-season exhaustion and catastrophic playoff failures. What we saw on April 25th was a complete redesign of the offensive system. The Fever are utilizing a tremendous amount of weak-side action. While the ball is being handled on one side of the court, Clark is navigating through a labyrinth of screens on the opposite side. This forces her defender to navigate through heavy traffic, taking physical punishment on every single possession just to keep up with her. By the time Clark actually catches the ball, her defender is already exhausted, a half step behind, and completely off balance. This is the hidden geometry of the court. It is a beautiful, violent ballet, and it requires an incredible amount of intelligence to execute perfectly. Clark has to read the defender's hips, understand the angle of the screen, and anticipate the exact moment the passing lane will open. It is a level of processing speed that borders on the superhuman. And she is doing it seamlessly, flawlessly, after a 9-month absence. Think about the psychological toll this takes on the opponent. When you are defending a player who needs the ball to be effective, you can relax when the ball is on the other side of the court. You can catch your breath. But when you are defending the new version of Caitlin Clark, there is no rest. There is no sanctuary. If you look away for a fraction of a second, she is gone, slipping back door for an easy layup or popping out to the perimeter for an uncontested three. She has turned the entire half court into a minefield for the defense. And let's not ignore the defensive side of the ball. The narrative has always been that her offense vastly outshines her defense. But in those 17 minutes, she was locked in. She was fighting over screens, staying in front of quick guards, and actively disrupting passing lanes. She recorded 3 rebounds, but it was the way she rebounded that stood out. She wasn't just waiting for the ball to fall into her lap. She was actively tracking the trajectory of the ball, boxing out bigger players, and securing the possession to instantly ignite the fast break. This is the mark of a player who is obsessed with winning, not just scoring. She understands that to hoist that championship trophy, to truly solidify her legacy and conquer the league, she has to be a two-way terror. She has to set the tone on both ends of the floor, and the rest of the Fever roster is feeding off that energy. When your superstar is diving for loose balls and fighting through heavy screens in a meaningless preseason game, it forces every single player on the bench to elevate their own intensity. It breeds a culture of absolute accountability. As we look ahead to the regular season, the storylines are endless. The 44 nationally televised games will bring an unprecedented level of scrutiny. The media will try to create rivalries, they will try to manufacture drama, and they will overanalyze every single post-game quote. But the reality of the situation is written in the game tape. The truth is in the footage. The Indiana Fever have constructed a juggernaut. They have surrounded a once-in-a-generation talent with a roster that understands their roles and executes them with lethal precision. And that generational talent has returned from a devastating setback, not just fully healed, but completely evolved. She has taken the darkest period of her professional career and forged it into an unbreakable armor. The New York Liberty learned a very painful lesson on April 25th. They walked into that arena expecting to test a rusty, hesitant player who was just happy to be back on the court. Instead, they walked into an ambush. They were out-schemed, out-hustled, and completely outclassed. And if a powerhouse team like the Liberty can be dismantled that easily, the rest of the league should be absolutely terrified. This is no longer a comeback story. The comeback is over. The moment she hit that first step-back three, the chapter on her injury was permanently closed. We have now entered a new era. We have entered the era of the fully realized, highly weaponized Caitlin Clark. We are going to be tracking every single moment of this historic season. We are going to break down the defensive schemes, the offensive sets, and the hidden patterns that dictate the outcome of these battles. We are not here for the surface-level narratives. We are here for the deep dive. We are here to uncover the truth behind the headlines. Because the WNBA is not just a basketball league anymore. It is a theater of war. And right now, the Indiana Fever are marching across the battlefield, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. They are playing with a level of ruthlessness and precision that demands our full attention. So, I want to hear from you. Get in the comments down below. What was the most impressive part of those 17 minutes for you? Did you notice the shift in the off-ball movement? Do you think the rest of the league has any countermeasure for this new offensive system? Let's spark a massive discussion down there. I want to build a community of people who actually understand the nuances of this game, who appreciate the tactical brilliance as much as the flashy highlights. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, if you want to see the game through a completely different lens, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications. We are just getting started. The preseason was merely the prologue. The real war begins on opening night. They thought she was gone. They thought the hype train had derailed. They thought the injury had leveled the playing field. They were dead wrong. The hiatus didn't break her. It allowed her to upgrade. It allowed her to study her enemies, refine her arsenal, and prepare for absolute domination. The silence is over. The storm has arrived, and the rest of the league has absolutely nowhere to hide. Keep your eyes open, stay vigilant, and never stop looking for the hidden patterns. I will see you in the next breakdown.